Welcome back to Markets Today. I'm your host, Mbithe Mwema. Today is Tuesday, the 24th of November. It's a slow day when it comes to the NSE and also when it comes to the corporate news in as far as Kenya is concerned. However, the key thing that we are looking forward to this week is the public hearing process, which starts tomorrow in as far as the budget making process in Kenya is concerned. This budget-making process takes 12 months. It starts with different stakeholders putting numbers together so that they can come up with a national budget. Then at some point during this process, there is an element of the public hearing, which will be running for the next 3 days, courtesy of the Ministry of Finance. If you are interested, I would encourage you to go to the Facebook page of the Ministry of Finance and log in as an interested participant, and you can be able to be alerted for this particular process, which starts tomorrow at 8:30. That said, we wanted to unpack this particular budget for the year 2020-2021. What does it mean? What are some of the risk factors? Has anything changed? And especially in light with COVID-19, and the primary impact of COVID-19 is the detrimental impact when it comes to tax collection as the economic output declines. So what next, and what should we be looking out for? Are there opportunities? Are there risks? And are there basic considerations for you as a business person or as an investor? To help us unpack this conversation, we are joined in studio by Mr. George Munga, who is the managing partner for AMG Kenya. Welcome to the show, Mr. Munga.
Thank you, Billy.
Before we started the show, George, we were just discussing public participation. So what is your read? The budget process, public participation. Should we care? Should we pay attention?
I think the drafters of the Constitution, Billy,
yes,
were very futuristic and very careful when they said that the budget making process should have a public participation element in it. But unfortunately, the spirit of that part of the Constitution has not been carried now into the budget making process. The public participation that we purport to have doesn't build eventually into our budgets. That is to say that there's a disconnect between what the common mwananchi or the common citizenry would want to see in the budget and eventually what builds into the budget. Okay. But that notwithstanding, I think maybe I would want to lay blame in Parliament, and that is the Budgets and Appropriation Committee.
Yes,
they should do more. They should be out there collecting views from the citizenry, and then eventually now build it into the budget that eventually is read. Okay. They do it the other way around. They wait for Treasury to read the budget, and then now they start querying those budget lines one by one.
Yes.
Which should not be the case. The Treasury should build the budget based on what Parliament has collected from the citizenry. Okay. And built into their report that now goes to the report that Budgets and Appropriation Committee now presents to Parliament. Okay. That is the way it should be. But I want to presume that some of these are work in progress. You remember we have the Constitution you're working with, the 2010 Constitution. I still want to believe it is still a new Constitution. Yes. So I want to believe that this is work in progress, and maybe as we go along, yes, these are some of the things that now we need to tighten as we implement the new Constitution.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, George, I hear you saying that the public participation, it's neither here or there. It's more or less good to know. But maybe for somebody who's watching, when you look at the budget making process, it takes 12 months. Maybe you can give us an overview. How does this start? Then who's deciding what gets what? Is it Treasury that says this is the amount of money we have, or is it the state institutions, the state corporations that come and say we need to do this, and we therefore need this amount of money? So you as Treasury make sure that it happens. How does it work?
The way our Constitution is drafted, our budget should be a two-pronged approach. That is, the executive does their bit, and the legislator also does their bit. What the executive need to do, the ministries need to do what we call a zero-based budget, meaning they query all the expense lines for the coming year and what they want to achieve, of course in line with the manifesto of the party that is ruling at any given time, and then now they build it into their unit budgets or their parastatal budgets that now eventually go to the departmental budgets and eventually now to the ministry's budget. Once the ministry has come up with their budgets, now they forward it to Treasury. Treasury's role should be just to collate and see what is reasonable or what is not reasonable. That is what we call the process of validation. Because sometimes you're given budget lines that when you look at your revenue projections, you might not be able to meet. So maybe what a minister's budget for this year, you would want to maybe tied to another 1 or 2 years. That is from the executive's branch. From the legislature, I believe that is where public participation should be seen. Remember, members of parliament are representatives of the people, and they're the people who elect them to articulate their issues. So I would expect the Budgets and Appropriations Committee to go out there and meet stakeholders, be it ISPAC, be it LSK, various lobbies, be it Kenya's Union Manufacturers, the Consumer Federation lobby, to get their feel, what they would want to see into the budget, and then collate all that and present to Parliament even before the budget is read, so that a document from Parliament is forwarded to Treasury, so that as they look at what the executive has proposed, they look at it vis-a-vis what the legislature is proposing, so that by the time the budget is being read in Parliament, they have married the two together, and the two are in sync with what Treasury is projecting to collect in terms of revenue in the following year, and what they project in terms of loans and borrowings that they are going to get in the following year. That is the way it should.
That's the way it should be.
Correct.
It sounds like we need a public hearing for the BBI, and they need to listen to you.
Agree.
All right, because today, when we're looking at this budget, before I get to my next question, I know that Kenya tries to synchronize this process with the East African community. Is the way we make our budget similar in terms of process with our neighbors? Is it the same way that developed countries do it?
You remember the East African community is under the Commonwealth.
Yes.
And this is a practice, I think, across the Commonwealth countries. I think as for Kenya, we have just taken it a notch higher to bring in public participation, and then of course the Budgets and Appropriation Committee that it should carry along the citizenry into the budget making process. Remember, we are trying to create an economic bloc within the East African community, and budget making process is one of the aspects of ensuring that the economic bloc is in sync with one to another. If you look at even our tax regimes across the region, they more or less reflect one another. So what I want to say is that the budget making process in East African community and in most Commonwealth countries mirror one another, but I think Kenya is one step ahead, bringing in what we call now public participation. I think that is now where we need to strengthen, to tighten our balls, so that we get our act together.
Okay. So last year, the big ticket item that we had, actually not last year, this current year during the budget reading 3.2, which was a huge budget. But of course, there have been amendments, and we expect further amendments. But today, when we followed the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Finance, his commentary, he does say that we are creating, getting into the process of coming up with a budget, but we don't have sufficient revenues.
Correct.
And we keep hearing Mr. Yutani saying that we need to have fiscal consolidation, but I never get the sense that the government or the government enterprises or the government corporations are cutting back on their spending. And also conversely, we also hear the Big Four agenda and the communique from Treasury to all the state corporations is ensure that your budget spend is aligned to Big Four, ensure that your budget spend can demonstrate measures to be able to kickstart the economy as we go through COVID-19. So I hear one thing, but I see a different thing. 3.2 is the number we were looking at. So how are we going to see, how do you think this pans out into the next year?
I think if there's one thing that this government has failed in, is policy making and ensure a follow through with the policies that they are putting across. Remember when we started the second term of the Jubilee government, we had the Big Four agenda. I think the only thing we saw was on housing, so to speak, and at least some little activity on affordable, affordable health care, so to speak. Yes. But again, they died. I think they died in the second or third month after the initiation of the same. We've heard about managing the country's wage bill, of which the president and the deputy president promised that they're going to cut down their salaries. Yes. By 30 or 40%, or so to speak. I expected that the president cutting his salary by 30% doesn't have any impact in the economy. Let me put it that way.
Should be
but
the
if that is cascaded down now to the entire civil service, yes, then you'd see a huge impact into the economy. So my thinking was that was just a pointer of what the executive wanted to achieve in managing their wage bill. Okay. Third, when Yatani started his term as minister, as the cabinet secretary in charge of treasury, I think he talked about consolidating our budget so that we only spend on the very necessary budget lines, and then consolidating also our loan book. I've seen very little towards that up to now. I think Yatani is now almost 1 year in office. So I think there is one thing to talk about policy and to formulate policy, and it's another thing to implement policy. I think Treasury, and by extension the government, has very good policies when it comes to the economy, but implementation, sorry to say, is almost next to nil. So we are just groping in the dark. We don't know where we are heading with our policy. Okay. I think the other day I saw the government requesting, is it IMF or so, yes, to suspend the payment, the loan repayment, okay, which is a bad pointer into where we are in terms of our loans and even our revenue collections.
Let me hold you on to that particular point. We take a short break. When we come back, we start looking at some of the key risk areas and starting off with debt. Please join this conversation. 20146. What do you think of the budget process? Are you paying attention? Or what more would you like to see or hear in as far as this process is concerned? We take a short break and we will see you in a few.